Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Freedom on Deck on 94.9 News Now and Stimulating Talk. Long Island Redneck here, Brian Bro, joined by the mean one, Chet Martin.
Build that wall, deport them all.
That's right. And the fearless one, C.V. Burton.
Just trying to live, man. Just trying to live.
CV's glass is half full.
That's what Alexandria Cortez said. Occasional cortex.
Oh, man. Oh, dude. It's been quite the week. It's been quite the week.
Yep.
And as all you know, nothing is going anywhere anytime fast.
Well,
Trump last Wednesday, this is great. President Trump on Wednesday walked out of a White House meeting with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer.
Chucky
Good
boy.
old Chuckles. After the Democrats said that they wouldn't agree to fund a border wall. Trump tweeted, just left the meeting with Chuck and Nancy, a total waste of time. I asked what is going to happen in 30 days if I quickly open things up. Are you going to approve border security, which includes a wall or steel barrier? Nancy said no. I said, bye-bye, nothing else works.
You know, it's you love reading that kind of stuff coming from the president because he's no holds barred. He tells it like it is.
Yep.
And they really don't know how to react to his leadership. When he addressed the nation, I thought he laid it out perfectly, and I thought he won the night. The spectacle that the Democrats created after that was embarrassing. First of all, when Obama was in the office, or you can go back to the days of Reagan, or you can go back to JFK, it's abnormal for the opposing party to release a statement after the president addresses the United States of America.
Yeah.
Very bizarre. And that just goes to show you that every step of the way, they are there to undermine the president of the United States. And Brian, I just want to say he outlined it perfectly. He talked about all the violent crimes against the American people by the illegal aliens with the numbers. He also presented specific offensive crimes to our finest, like the rape and the murder of that woman in the Air Force, and also the murder of that police officer last week in California, where we all saw the spectacle of his brother basically crying in front of the world. And by the way, he was the son of an immigrant that came into the United States the right way. And President Trump addressed that we have the proper avenues for these people to come in. But unfortunately, what the Democrats aren't doing here is realizing that it's not just a wall that's being funded here. Our Border Patrol and our ports of entry are lacking right now, and we need funds in order to get them back up to the standards that they belong at.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you gotta like what Penn said in this article. About going back to Wednesday. He says that we incorporated Democrat ideas and language in our proposal and made an offer to resolve this impasse and address the crisis at our southern border. And today, in this brief meeting, we heard once again that Democrat leaders are unwilling to even negotiate. They are digging their heels in because they know that the president is not going to waver on this. Right. So they are playing the game. And you know who's getting hurt in the whole thing is all of the workers, the American people that are not getting paid, that are government employees. And and I understand where the president is coming from. And the only way that you're going to deal with Democrats is to hold their feet to the fire. Because if you open up, if you say fine, we'll fund it, and then we'll deal with this issue next month, they're never going to come to the table.
Yeah, CV, it would be like pussyfooting like the Bush administration did for 8 years.
Right.
My impression, and I could be wrong, but it seems to me that Trump led everybody to think that he was going to declare a state of emergency and take the money from the Pentagon, from their budget, which is like $700 billion. They wouldn't even miss $10 billion. And I think he led Schumer and Pelosi to think that. and they had a whole different speech ready. I think Schumer was supposed to make a speech.
You might be right.
I think
You might be
Schumer was
right.
supposed to make a speech by himself, but when he was punked by Trump, this is just my opinion, he had to pull Pelosi in because he was like humming, and he looked so angry.
Well,
they didn't know what to
and
say.
what was with
They looked like Herman and Lily Munster, didn't
Dude,
they?
what was with
One of Schumer's eyes was like half closed.
That's what I'm saying. What's with the? He has one eye that's wide open, big, and then one that's like droopy and saggy. It's like one of his eyes took heroin.
Because I think Trump took all the steam or took all the wind out of his sail because I think he was going to go up there and say he cannot misappropriate funds that was slotted for this military without congressional support, and this is a dictatorship. I think he had a whole different angle he was going to go on, but he just totally
You might be
took
right.
that right out of his wind.
But you know what? The Democrats are so aligned with non-citizens. They really are. They are not for the American people anymore. I saw, actually, Brian showed me this video of Alexandria Cortez, as Savage likes to call her, where she was on with Anderson Blooper, and she was talking about the basically how ICE is a oppressive agency that violates
Human rights
Human
violations.
rights.
Yep, the human rights violations.
And I'm
Yep.
like, this is not. We're talking about an agency that takes out terror. Every day, gets rid of terrorists. We're talking about ISIS. We're talking about Al Qaeda. And these are the men and women that do this work. And she has the nerve to say that.
Well, the greatest thing is that she goes and she says she spews out the mouth, and they had the former ICE director on, and he was quick to point out that wait a second, first off, that was border control.
Right.
Okay, Border Patrol.
Right.
That those two children died in their custody.
Yeah,
that
she was
Border
talking
Patrol.
about the kids that
Not
died.
ICE.
Right.
Not ICE. Border Patrol. And it's not human rights violations for ICE agents, okay, immigration and customs enforcement, to do their jobs. They go and they find people that are here that are illegal, that oftentimes have warrants for their arrest. They find them, they get them, they bring them to court. They have their day in court, and then if they're not going to jail, they're getting out of here. Yeah. They're doing their jobs. That is exactly what ICE was formed for. So that's not a human rights violation to send somebody back to their country of origin when they're not here legally.
It's always to paint us like the Nazis. And especially, I guarantee you, if it was done under Barack Obama, she wouldn't have been saying the same damn thing.
Right.
It's always a double standard. Mm-hmm. And like I said, under 8 years of Barry, 18 of those children died under the custody of the United States of America.
Why do you suppose that they're going after Border Patrol so hard, ICE so hard, not Border Patrol?
Because they want to eliminate ICE.
But why?
The agency.
Because ICE
they had
rounds
Democrats
them up and throw them?
because
and Border Patrol just tries to block them.
Remember, we had that woman in New York that ran on eliminating ICE, that ran for the attorney, the state attorney.
ICE are the ones who are rounding up MS-13 that the Democrats are saying are human beings. They're not animals.
Right, you can't call animals animals.
Thank God.
You can't call a spade, according to the Democrat Party.
No,
but that's why they hate ICE, because they're rounding them up and shipping them out.
Yeah, and like you said, Border Patrol. Border Patrol they're not going after because they can't really. Border Patrol might stop a couple from coming in. Yeah. But, for the majority of the ones that are deported from this country are by ICE.
Also, Border Patrol has kind of always been there, but ICE is sort of
the new kid.
Yeah, the new kid on the block that they can beat up and bully.
Well, listen, we don't care. We back ICE. We back Border Patrol. We back our men and women in blue over here on Freedom on Deck, and we hope you do too. Don't turn the dial. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the New York Governor Cuomo demands that the bill allowing abortions up to the time of birth, or he won't sign the New York State budget. That's special. Don't turn the dial. 94.9 News Now and stimulating talk. Welcome back to Freedom on Deck, 94.9 News Now and Stimulating Talk. That was a good topic, guys.
Hey, before we get started, I just want to give everybody our guests for today's program, since we didn't do it last topic. We have Margaret Valois, if I'm saying that correctly. She's from SaveServices.org, and she's a Title IX attorney. And we also have Thomas S. Schmitz from Conservatives for Palin, coming by to talk about the Democrats' increased anti-Semitism and anti-Christian rhetoric that's gone against Vice President Pence.
Oh, yeah.
And has also come from these two congresswomen that have been elected to Congress from Minnesota and from Michigan. Pretty rash, as we like to call it here on Freedom on Deck.
Rash it.
Yeah.
Anyway. But we'll go on to another wonderful human being, Governor Cuomo.
Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah. New York Governor Cuomo demands that a bill allowing abortions up to birth, or he won't sign the state budget. New York Governor Cuomo vowed to protect and expand abortion access for women in the state, promising Monday to nix a state budget that doesn't include looser abortion laws. Cuomo, a Democrat, as if we didn't know, promised to add abortion protections to the state constitution and vowed to reject a budget that doesn't include expanding abortion access while speaking at Barnard College in New York City. Members of the state legislature and abortion advocates attended the event, CBS News reported. We have led the way on women's rights like no other state, period, Cuomo said. He always loves to pat himself on the back.
Yeah.
Abortion is legal up until 24 weeks in pregnancy in the state.
Even that's
Cuomo
disgusting.
Cuomo seeks to pass the Reproductive Health Act, which will provide exceptions for circumstances where a woman's health is at risk or where a baby will be born with a fatal fetal abnormality. The legislation also seeks to allow nurse practitioners, and here's where I take issue. Not that I don't take issue with abortion, but the legislation also seeks to allow nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, and qualified healthcare professionals to provide abortions.
Or the janitor, if they want.
Right, basically to carry out. So the governor also is looking to pass a bill requiring insurance companies to provide free contraceptive care. Monday, Governor vowed Monday not to sign the budget in April unless both bills are included.
So this is a late term abortion narrative that they're pushing now that they have control of the House again, and this is up to the day of birth.
Yeah, they
can have an abortion.
Right. Yes, up until birth,
as long as there's a threat of harm to the woman, in their opinion.
Correct.
What does that mean?
Well,
that's what I want to know.
You open that up, and the way that it's written, say where a woman's health is at risk. Well, that's very vague.
It is vague.
It doesn't say where a woman's life is at risk.
What if she's depressed?
Yeah. What if she's just depressed? What if the idea? Maybe she's, there's postpartum depression. Is there prepartum depression? I don't know.
Right.
But maybe there is, and I wish that there was a doctor out there that could tell us. But if they're assuming that if you could have postpartum depression, that you could have prepartum depression, and if that's the case, if she's simply depressed or having anxiety about being a mother or any of that other stuff, is that a reason? And I think it will become a reason.
Yeah, and this whole back and forth between Cuomo and Hillary, I'm reading from Town Hall, is a bunch of gushing from Cuomo, lavishing this praise on the Clinton. He said, "I love Hillary, don't tell Bill." After she said, this was her comment, "Our right to make the most deeply personal decision is facing the most significant threats in recent memory," she said. Obviously a dig at President Trump. "This administration has rolled back access to reproductive health services," which they haven't, "at home and around the world," which they haven't, "and proposed cuts to the international health development and diplomacy that put women's lives and our national security at risk. So what did the president do?
How is cutting international funding to other countries for abortion or any of this other stuff a national security risk to us?
It's not, and it's something that we can't afford. CV, it's just a bunch of just false narrative from the left as usual.
I would like to ask Andrew if he would approve of a plan to allow abortions up to 62 years of age, because that's how old he is. But another message I would have to Andrew is, hey, Andrew, a son de me, tu si proviano svashim. And he is.
Yeah. Yeah, Andy, if you're listening, I don't think Bill would mind you loving Hillary. In fact, I think he would be enthralled.
Go ahead, take her.
What? Thank God. I mean, oh, man.
You see, this is the thing. They kill off their own voting bloc, too. I mean, that's the craziest thing that I've always wondered about the Democrats. Their voters are the inner city community where most of these Planned Parenthood offices are stationed at. I'm totally against any bill pushing forward anything that has to do with reproductive rights, going against just being the right to life. Right. Pro-life is the way to go, and these people are sick Satanists, in my opinion.
Well, and the other thing that I take issue with is, like I said, said it before, is that the way that the bill is actually written wants to allow nurse practitioners.
Yeah.
Physician's assistants and qualified healthcare professionals. What
the janitor? The janitor.
Now, I mean, forgive me if I'm wrong here, but the whole reason that you become a doctor and spend thousands and thousands of dollars in medical school and 8 or 12 years of your life to become a doctor is so that your nurse isn't carrying out procedures that you should be doing. Right. And if that's the case, why aren't they teaching this to nurses and physician's assistants in medical school? Because they're not doctors. And the first woman who loses her life in an office having an abortion carried out by a nurse practitioner or a qualified healthcare personnel or professional is going to be sued. They are going to be sued, and I'll tell you right now, that doctor will not be practicing medicine anymore.
Good point. And I think Chet made a good point earlier when he was saying that it's satanic. I think, and this is my own personal opinion. I'm allowed to have my opinions, people. It doesn't
only on this show.
It's no reflection on the station or my cohorts here, but Hillary, in my opinion, was a Satanist. And people in the DNC were involved in Satanism. And I think Andrew Cuomo is maybe involved because they don't see any value in the life of children. They sacrifice children.
Oh, absolutely. And to me, it's demonic. It's sacrificial, and it's bloodlust, in my opinion. Yeah. These are sick people. I mean, these are innocent children that they're killing off, and they don't give a rat's ass who it is that they kill.
If I'm right, I hope the whole lid blows off the thing and they all get exposed.
Well, that's what we've been waiting for a long time with this president, right?
Yeah.
Well, hopefully. We'll see.
Tick-tock.
Absolutely. Listen, we're going to be coming back, folks, and our first guest of the day is Margaret Valois, and she's the Title IX attorney coming on from S.A.V.E, Stop Abusive and Violent Environments. You're not going to miss any of this conversation, folks. This is about Betsy DeVos and her rollbacks. Come on back to Freedom on Deck. Welcome back to Freedom on Deck on 94.9 News Now and Stimulating Talk. Connecticut, Long Island, and Rhode Island, you're rocking with the best. Make sure you go to freedomondeck.com. Check out everything we have to offer there. We have all our backtracks. on the terrestrial FM show. We also have a midweek podcast. We haven't really been doing that lately, but it's going to pick back up. And also go and like us on Facebook. Make sure to follow us on Twitter. And sign up for our BitChute and our YouTube. We'd appreciate that. So listen, our featured guest for today's program is Title IX attorney Margaret Valois from S.A.V.E, Stop Abusive and Violent Environments. Margaret, welcome to Freedom on Deck.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So it's a pleasure to have you. Now, let's just, first of all, tell us what it is that you do as a Title IX attorney, Margaret.
Okay, well, I'm not a litigator, so what I do is I work with students who have been accused of violating their school sexual misconduct policies. So I depending on when I jump into the process, I typically advise them through the investigation process. If there's a hearing, I attend the hearing with them. Usually, what's interesting about these things is that my hands are tied. Attorneys who do advising refer to themselves as potted plants. We're not allowed to talk typically.
Yeah.
So you don't get to advocate for your client. You basically have to be kind of a puppet master and coach the students in what to say and how to respond to questions and how to question other people and basically how to be their own attorneys.
So this is you're defending the accused for the most part.
Well, I'm coaching them in how to defend themselves, yes.
Okay. Now, I wanted to get into this, Margaret. Recently, Nancy Pelosi had put out that Trump's education secretary, Betsy DeVos, was making things worse for women who report they have been sexually assaulted, saying in a tweet that her plan to create extraordinary barriers for survivors is an insult to students across the country. So, Margaret, is Betsy DeVos and her new regulations in any way undermining Title IX protections?
No, I would argue that she's enhancing them, even for accusing students. Pelosi's comments kind of assume that there is an actual victim. And the whole purpose of a campus investigation is to figure out whether or not there an actual assault or harassment has occurred. So these proposed guidelines more clearly define sexual assault, sexual harassment, and give much more clear guidelines as to whom people should be reporting their actual assaults or the incidents. So it really gives accusers better protection, and it also requires colleges to offer certain accommodations, counseling, maybe extra time to take a test, that kind of thing, even if they don't open an investigation. So a lot of times, you just had a bad date, it didn't go the way you thought, you need to take a step back. You get certain accommodations anyway, whether or not there's actually an investigation of your claim.
And, Margaret, when I look at this, I kind of wonder to myself, is Nancy Pelosi's criticism of Ms. DeVos just another example of a Trump-era pick being singled out just because they were picked by President Trump?
I think there's some truth to that. If you step back and you actually just read the proposed regulations, you'll see that they actually are fair. There's a lot of outcry about the cross-examination requirement, but cross-examination seeks to find the truth, and if you have a finding based on a solid investigation and cross-examination and evidence that's brought, then you have a much stronger result that's less likely to be overturned on an appeal. So these are protections for both accusers and accused, and I don't know why anyone would have a problem with them at all. And I do think that it's just partisan politics.
We have Margaret Valois on, and she is from S.A.V.E, that's Stop Abusive and Violent Environments, and you can check them out at www.saveservices.org. She's a Title IX attorney. Margaret, S.A.V.E. released a special report that I'm pretty interested in that examined exactly what happened with women who claimed they were sexually assaulted on college campuses during the Obama-era policies. What was discovered in this special report?
Well, that special report revealed kind of what I was talking about before. There were, you know, there are several issues that showed up again and again regarding, incomplete investigations, investigations that were too lengthy, um, in, improper questioning, things like that. So, and these were schools that were following the Obama era guidelines. They were supposed to bolster confidence in reporting and really, address the perceived campus sexual assault epidemic. But what they really did was create a lot more dissatisfaction. Hundreds and hundreds of lawsuits were filed. OCR complaints tripled. They went from something like 300 a year to 1,000 the first year the Obama guidelines were implemented.
Wow.
And 1 year were almost as many as 3,000. So, they didn't the Obama era guidelines didn't fix things. They really just made a lot more people dissatisfied, and I think a lot of that was that what schools were expected to do was too broad.
Okay.
It became that schools felt like they had to investigate a complaint of somebody bumping up against another student in the dining hall line,
Right.
or something like that. That's not sexual harassment or assault. That is an accident.
Well, yeah, and we get into that, and that was something else. We had that case on campus, the girl with the bed on her back, and she had made a kind of a spectacle, the whole thing, where it was really a false claim that went out, and there's a lot of that happening on campus, isn't there?
Yes, there's a lot of overreaction. And a lot of it is that there's just the manufacturing of the idea that there is a rape epidemic on campus, and so unfortunately students are going to college presuming they're going to be assaulted.
Right.
So then anything that happens, their radar is up, and so anything that happens that is, an instant, oh, I've been assaulted, because they're kind of expecting it. But then, that's not fair. That you're supposed to go to college to learn and to have a good time and to grow up, and it's putting a lot of stress on both young women and young men. I have a lot of most of my clients are men, and even the students who in the investigations and the hearings, their testimony comes out that they followed all of the rules. They basically, you're supposed to get consent for every step along the way of an encounter. So, if you want to move your hand or something like that, you're supposed to get permission. And so I have students that actually do that. And then their question about why they ask for consent so many times. So
right. And it's like,
no-win.
Yeah, and it's like you don't want to say hello to a female without fear of being told that you're sexually harassing.
Right. And there have been, I don't remember which campus it was. There some I read somewhere where some school was thinking about implementing like you're not allowed to look at anybody for longer than X amount of seconds, or that would be harassment or stalking, or but nobody can live up to those standards.
No.
We're human beings,
especially
we're
not
robots.
young children going off into the world. I mean,
Right.
it's ridiculous to put these kind of standards upon them when they haven't even lived through that to begin with.
Right. And every school has different rules and different standards. There are a couple of states that like New York, for instance, has sort of a requirement that the colleges have more uniform rules from campus to campus, but a lot of states don't. So, for instance, every time I get a new client, I have to learn all of their school policies, just like I'm learning a new new laws for a different state, and it can vary from school to school within a state.
So, Margaret, what have you seen as a standard response by college officials for complainant and accused that's been accused in a sexual assault cases on a college campus?
There is no standard. It's when a parent calls me, I say, "Welcome to the Twilight Zone." You don't know what to expect from minute to minute, from case to case. Going back to the same school more than one time, you can have because you have different people involved, different people hearing the case. You never know. But one thing I usually do know are the buzzwords and the phrases that the complainant is going to use. So their information or their coaching or the advice that they receive is pretty consistent. They claim to be upset and that they can't go to class anymore and that their education is disrupted, because that's Title IX is supposed to guarantee your right to an education. So they use a lot of emotional words and things like that, but each accused person is treated very differently depending on who's investigating the case and who is, if there's a hearing, who's hearing the case. So it's the first thing I advise my students, though, is to understand what their school's definition of consent is.
Okay, Margaret, here's the easiest question, but probably in some ways the hardest question. What do we tell our kids that are going off to college and in preparing them against this?
Before you sign a contract and accept a school's offer to attend, you need to read through all of the policies and procedures. And you can Google your school. You can Google your school and Title IX. You can find out if there have been complaints or lawsuits filed against your school. And from those things, you can't just go to campus and say, "Oh, it has nice brick walkways and ivy-covered buildings, I'm going to go here." You have to really look at what the culture of the college is, and it's all online now. But you need to sit down and review it and make sure that you can live your life according to those standards.
Okay, Margaret. Well, we have about a minute to go. I want to give you ample time to tell everybody where they can go check you out. Also, please give them the spelling of your name, because I had a bit of a time pronouncing it. I hope I did a good job. And also the site and where they exactly can go and look at everything you have to offer.
Okay. My last name is Valois. It's V like Victor, A-L-O-I, S like Sam. And my website is Title9Defender.com. That's Titleix Defender.com.
And they can also look at some of what you have to offer on www.saveservices.org, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, everybody, that was Margaret Valois, and it was a pleasure having her on. Now, listen, we're going to come back. This is a controversial story that hasn't been getting much coverage. But there's a second black man that's been found dead at Democrat mega donor Ed Burke's home. And there was some drug involvement here and some, prostitution. Let's be upfront about it. Don't miss it. Freedom on Deck.
Oh yeah, Freedom on Deck on your dial, 94.9 News Now and stimulating talk. I hope you're enjoying the show. We are. This you may not enjoy. A second black man found dead at the home of Ed Buck, a giant Democrat donor. Says that a black man was reported found dead Monday morning at the Los Angeles residence of Democrat donor Ed Buck, the second such mysterious death at his home in the past few years. Wehoville law enforcement has yet to release the identity of the deceased male who died in Buck's West Hollywood apartment. Buck was investigated and later cleared following the death of Jamel Moore, a young man who died of a drug overdose at the 65-year-old's home in July of 2017. Following Moore's death, Buck had been accused of having a fetish for inserting drugs into black men he meets through dating websites.
He wasn't just inserting drugs.
Right. Before his death, Moore wrote of Buck injecting him with drugs during their encounters.
Well, like with a suppository or something?
I have no idea. But local activists have said that the Los Angeles Police Department declined to press charges against Buck due to his sizable financial contributions to then Governor of California Jerry Brown and failed presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. So I want to know where the hell in our country we don't charge somebody because of their political clout.
Obviously, California.
Obviously, they get away with murder. Oh, for real. It's sick.
That's the statement in that article. What article is that from?
That is from Breitbart. And it goes on. It says Jasmine Canick, a community organizer, is organizing a vigil for the deceased male near Buck's home. City Council member John D'Amico and Lindsay Horvath have asked the city manager Paul. These names, man. Arvello to request Sheriff Alex Villanova to make an investigation into the death a priority. Well, I would think that it would be a priority, being that somebody died of unnatural causes in someone's home.
The second person to die in his home
in less than 2 years.
He was administering illegal narcotics into what it sounds like to me is a black prostitute male that he had in his home. And
from the video going on Tinder.
From the video that I watched, Brian, from Fox News, there are close to probably over 1,000 protesters in front of his home demanding justice, but you don't see any of it on MSM.
No, that's Hillary's man.
Right.
That's her dude.
So because he made sizable donations to the Democrat Party, he's free. And he murdered 2 people.
Yep.
At this point, he should be locked up as a danger to himself and others. Even if it's not, even if he's not a suspect in murder. It's not murder, it's recklessness.
And they say the man's identity is being withheld and won't be released for safety. Well, who's the last person he killed? Well, have we heard from the family of the last man that he... And, I remember this story. I remember this happening to this guy. Yeah. This happened, what was it, 2 years ago?
It was July 2017. It was a male.
Okay.
It was a male escort, probably having diseases of all kinds.
So within 2 years, this guy has murdered 2 black Americans, and the left says nothing. But 2 black gay Americans have died in this guy's control under the pretense of injecting illegal narcotics, and the left doesn't say a damn thing.
Think about how many male escorts come in and out of his abode.
Oh, we're lucky he only killed 2.
Where 2 of them have died. That must... we're talking in the thousands, probably.
Yeah.
Of reckless living, drug abuse, heroin, who knows what else.
Yep. You gotta love some of the people that comment on this article. There's one guy, Mike, says, "I'll help out with a statement. Nothing to see here, folks. Move along. The charges to the pledge, the changes to the Pledge of Allegiance are as follows: one nation, in spite of God, infinitely divisible, with liberty and justice for sale."
Oh, and I'm sorry. They do have the first deceased gentleman that died at his abode. It was Jamel Moore, who was 26.
Right, but they haven't released this current one.
Initially was ruled an accidental methamphetamine overdose.
Yeah.
But the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office reopened the investigation after writing in Moore's journal implicated Buck in his drug use.
Right. Now, and
so that tells you Buck wasn't giving the investigators the whole story from the get.
Right. And as soon as that happened, and here's what ticks me off about it. So here you have the victim, writes about the methamphetamine use, writes about himself being injected by this stuff, and nothing happens. Now you have a second victim, and they're not releasing the name of this victim.
What are they waiting for? A third victim? A fourth victim?
Well, I don't
victim?
understand why this isn't all over the news. What happened? So the Me Too movement only applies to people, to women that are getting raped and sexually assaulted and killed. Is that what that's about? Because if you have somebody that is being drugged, sexually assaulted, and killed, I would think that would be all over the news.
He's obviously going onto the dark web to find these male prostitutes.
Who knows where he's going? He's probably going to Tinder. You don't have to go far, CV.
That's
Trust
true.
Me,
Yeah.
These websites. Listen, it's a dating website. That website is for people to go hook up.
And it's sad. It says that Buck is well known in the figure, a well-known figure in the circles of LGBT political circles.
Yeah.
Well, I don't really hear them saying much about this.
No, nobody's
It's not
talking.
all over Facebook.
Nope.
It's not all over Twitter. It's not hashtag bring Buck to justice.
No.
So they don't really give a rat's rear end because he's a Democrat.
Well, Buck's career started as a
Bottom
model, a fashion model in Europe. So it's not that surprising that he's a homosexual. But, with all these sex toys and drug abuse.
And it's also not, it's also really not surprising that he's gotten away with this. That's the sad part. I'd like to be more shocked, but I'm not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it just goes to show you that being friends with Hillary Clinton gets you out of a lot of jams.
It sure as hell does.
Could also get you killed. It could also get you killed.
And good old Jerry Brown. I wonder if Hillary and Jerry are going to if they're going to return the money. From this blood money.
Vince Forster was a friend. What happened to him?
Sick.
Listen, we're going to be coming back with Thomas S. Schmitz from conservativesforpalin.com. We're talking about anti-Semitism and anti-Christian rhetoric from the Democrats. Don't go anywhere. This is Freedom on Deck. Welcome back to Freedom on Deck on 94.9 News Now and stimulating talk, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and the shores of Long Island. You're rocking with the best. Chet Martin, Brian Bro, and CV Burton. Don't forget to go to freedomondeck.com where you can check out all our backtracks, midweek podcast. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and check out our BitChute. Subscribe to BitChute or YouTube. Listen, our next guest is a regular to the program, one of our favorites, and we just don't have him on enough, and I need to start having him on more often. But from conservativesforpalin.com, the editor from conservativesforpalin.com, Thomas S. Schmitz. Thomas, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Happy New Year, guys.
Good
to hear your voices.
Happy New Year to you. And I think that this is kind of an important topic that we're going to be talking about, considering the spotlight right now is on the Christian faith and on the Jewish faith. So, Thomas, there's a rise in anti-Semitic and anti-Christian rhetoric coming from the Democrat Party with two Muslim women that have been elected to Congress, Rashida Tlaib out of Michigan and Ilhan Omar from Minnesota. Now, Thomas, Omar took a snide dig at Vice President Pence's faith on Twitter, showing a picture of Pence with his eyes closed during Trump's Oval Office meeting with Chuck and Nancy, and the caption, "Jesus, take the wheel," which is an offensive comment for not only for Christians to hear, but last week Rashida Tlaib was shown to have a map of the Middle East with a sticky note and the word Palestine placed over the state of Israel in her congressional office in Washington, D.C. And she was also blasted for a tweet where she said pro-Israel Americans have dual loyalty. What do you make out of all this, Thomas?
Oh, this should concern every single good American. You know, when a new House rep gets to the Hill, they have to be sworn in by the vice president, and they have to stand there with their hand on the Bible, or probably a Koran in her case, and they have to say, "I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without mental reservation," blah, blah, blah. You know the rest.
Yep.
Okay, so she took that oath, and an oath is serious. You have to you have to stick to it. It's a covenant, and you guys understand what I mean by that. But then, she is Islamic, and so which comes first for her, because if you go to the Koran, I was reading parts of the Koran today. I've read the Koran because I needed it back in 2001 when the Twin Towers came down, because I needed to understand what's up with these people. And in Surah 5 of the Koran, Muhammad via Allah is talking about Christians and Jews. And we'll start right here. I made a few notes. In Surah 5:13, he talks and he says, "We curse them, and you shall always discover treachery in them, except a few of them." And the them is the Jews and the Christians. And then further down in the surah, this is what's problematic. "The punishment of those who wage war against Allah and his apostle and strive to make mischief in the land is only this, that they should be murdered or crucified, or their hands and their feet should be cut off on opposite sides, or they should be imprisoned." Okay,
Yeah.
so that's a problem right there, because, if she took that oath, and the oath is to the Constitution, and the oath is against the enemies of this country, so, it's a legitimate question to ask her, where does your loyalty truly lie? And what really got me was the Palestinian note that she put over the map of Israel, because what she's doing is she's pushing that Levant agenda, and the Levant is it's an Arab Islamic reimagination of the map of that area, and the Levant is that area minus Israel.
Right.
Okay, and they always make this comment about Palestinian this and Palestinian that, but as Golda Meir said, there are no Palestinians, and she was right. But there's no such thing. It's an invented people. The so-called Palestinians are Jordanian, they are Syrian, and they are Lebanese. There are no Palestinian folk songs, Palestinian cookbooks, because it doesn't exist. And prior to the 20th century, this area was part of the Ottoman Empire. And then right around like 1901 is when things really started to heat up and to change. There was the Arab Revolt in around 2016 or so. England and France got involved with the Pikes Agreement, and then we had the Arab-Israeli War of 48, and the result of that was the lines and the map being drawn, which kind of followed the United Nations 1947 plan for an ethnic partition of the formerly that was British ruled at that time, and so the United Nations 1947 plan for ethnic partition that was put into place, and the very next day of course, the so-called Palestinians. Well, actually, no, they weren't even called that then. The the Arab people, they disavowed these new United Nation border lines, and the very next day is when we got this Palestinian people totally invented. And they talk a lot about giving Palestine, freeing Palestine. Well, if you really want to free Palestine, give it back to the Jewish people, because King David established that back in, in the what was that? That would have been like around
Maybe
the
1,000 years BC.
So, yeah, exactly. There you go. So I have real problems with this because one, now she's got a big bully pulpit and she can just throw around this word Palestinian when there's no such thing. This was invented. This is PR. This is like Yasser Arafat kind of stuff. And so I have a big problem with her doing that, and us, as Americans just accepting that it's okay to have her in there. The Democrats will argue freedom of religion, blah, blah, blah. However, when you really read the Koran, it isn't a religion. It's a military doctrine,
and political and overtly political.
Oh yeah, it's a political thought is what it is. It's not a religion. These surahs that I quoted from the Quran. There are so many more like that, and they are not. There are ones that say love Allah and His angels, because there's a lot of crossover. Noah's in there, Jesus is in there, Gabriel and Michael are in there. There's a lot of crossover, but most of it is things like I read, the punishment of those who wage war against Allah should be murdered, crucified, or their hands and feet cut off. So, whose side is she on? It's a legitimate question. Here's the problem, though. When we talk about this, immediately the left, cries Islamophobia and hatred, blah, blah, blah. But when you explain it and look at timelines and read history, you see that none of that is true. And I've always felt that with conservatism, that's it's not a flaw, it's an unfortunate instance, because for conservatism has to be explained logically, and you have to be able to read. Where liberalism, on the other hand, is straight up emotions and feelings. So, they can just say, you're haters, and then our argument requires people to think and to read. And so it's much harder for us, which, that's a challenge, and we can ask for guidance from God to help us with that. And it can happen. It will happen, because this is a Christian nation, period. There's, Moses is on the Supreme Court walls, and our whole structure of government is set up from it's Mosaic law. God told Moses what kind of government to have, and it was families of 10, and then above them were families of 50, and then above that was families of 100 with him in charge. Well, that mirrors our city councils, our state legislators, and our United States Congress. And the only difference is we vote for people, whereas Moses would choose people based on their level of fear of God and holiness. So it is a Judeo-Christian nation. But now we've got these two house reps from ISIS basically in there that are kind of fighting us from within. It's very concerning. Every American, and especially every Christian American, should really pay attention to this and call Congress and tell them that. But when you call, you need to be very careful and accurate and articulate in your words, and use timelines, use dates, use examples, because they're just going to write it down as it's a Islamophobic hate call, when it's not. This is concerned Americans who care that we've got these two little moles in there now that are promoting Islamic thought and perpetuating the myth of the Palestinians, when it just doesn't exist. There are no Palestinians. They're Lebanese, they're Syrian, they're Jordanian, and that's it.
And Thomas, before you came on, we were talking about this Post-it note, and I said she might as well have written Hogwarts on the thing, because it doesn't exist.
Seriously, yeah. And again, it's that Levant angle that they do. Like I said, the Levant is a re-envisioned map of that area that does not include Israel, and their whole goal is to eliminate Israel. You look at a map, you've got little tiny Israel right there, surrounded by these horrible savages who want to kill them, because their doctrine that I just read, Surah 5, Surah 5:33, tells them that they should be murdered, crucified, and their hands and feet cut off. That's a problem, okay? This is bigger than flesh and blood, and you guys know what I mean by that.
And absolutely, and I think that the ironic thing about her talking about dual loyalty is it seems like she has the dual loyalty here.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's another example of Rush Limbaugh. He has always said this, and it's so true. When you want to know what the Democrats are up to, just take a look at what they are accusing you of, i.e. Russian collusion, blah, blah. You can go on and on and on, because the Democrats, they have a tendency, well, not a tendency, they have an obsession or a OCD type complex where they project, whatever it is that is so passionate and ingrained in them, they project it onto others and then freak out. Plus, they take everything so literally and clutch their pearls.
That's why we call them snowflakes.
Oh, yeah, they are snowflakes, the epitome of it. And it's going to be difficult because, we've got these two Islamic House reps, and pretty much anything that we say will be called Islamophobic. So that's why I urge people, spend a few minutes, or not a few, it's going to take about 30 minutes, research the timeline of Israel and the so-called Palestine, so you can talk about this with family and friends.
Yes.
And people in your community.
Thomas, tell everybody where they can go and check you out, please.
Oh, I'm easy to find. I'm on Facebook, Thomas S. Schmitz, and on Twitter, it's at Thomas S. Schmitz. SCHMITZ. There are 3 S's in the middle. Thomas S. Schmitz.
Everybody, that was Thomas S. Schmitz from Conservative4, the number 4, Palin.com. And listen, we're going to get a little more in detail about Miss Rash Tlaib and her anti-Semitic slur that she put out on the Twitterverse. There's no room for this in politics, I would hope. Come on back to FOD.
Welcome back to Freedom on Deck. 94.9 News Now and stimulating talk. If you're just tuning in, you missed one heck of a first half of the show. But that's all right, because we got a topic for you right now. Good old Democrat, Muslim, Islamist Rashida Tlaib unleashes anti-Semitic slurs against congressional colleagues, says they have dual loyalties.
How to win friends and influence people.
This woman has had one heck of a first week, let me tell you.
Well, we were talking a little bit about this with Thomas before, but we were talking more so about her counterpart over in Minnesota and her comments about Mike Pence,
Right.
and his come to Jesus moment, which is offensive.
Right.
And now she makes it, she has had a hell of a first week. She calls the president a mother effer, and then she goes blatantly anti-Semitic.
Yep.
And then defends herself in saying that it wasn't meant that way.
Well,
Which is bull.
This is coming from the Daily Wire.
What other way could you possibly take it?
Yep, coming from the Daily Wire. Freshman Democrat Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib is creating fresh controversy in her second week in the House of Representatives, but this time it's over a shocking anti-Semitic slur levied at her congressional colleagues for their support of a bill which would allow local, state, and federal agencies to avoid doing business with entities that support the anti-Israeli boycott, divestment, sanction movement. Phil Klein in the Washington Examiner reports that Tlaib charged that supporters were torn by their dual loyalty,
Which is
to both Israel and the United States, and claimed that the bill's supporters forgot what country they represent.
Well, we can say the same for her.
Right.
And Palestine. She had a sticky note that was over Israel in her office. In her office in D.C. that said Palestine on it. You're telling me that she represents the United States of America? Palestine isn't even a real place. You might as well have Hogwarts written on your sticky note.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Rash, you moron. You're supposed to be loyal to your allies overseas, you stupid.
Our greatest ally.
Yeah, our greatest ally. It's the only, it's the only free democratic state in the Middle East.
And Rubio said to her, this dual loyalty canard is typical anti-Semitic line. BDS isn't about freedom and equality. It's about destroying Israel. And if boycotting Israel is constitutionally protected, then boycotting companies that boycott Israel is also constitutionally protected. And what she said is, Senator Rubio, it is clear my earlier tweet was critical of U.S. senators like yourself who are seeking to strip Americans of their constitutional right of free speech. No, you're being anti-Semite.
Right. Exactly. And you know what ticks me off is that we as a country have allowed this. We allowed this. This schmuck is in office because we allowed this. You want to take everybody in? You want to take in people from countries that do not agree with our way of life, do not agree with our freedoms, do not agree with our religion, how we were founded. They want to take us over. They want this country to fall. It is part of their ideology. That is what it is. And we have allowed this to happen to ourselves. If you don't want this to happen, then stop this. Stop this. Maybe people that weren't born in this country shouldn't be allowed to represent this country.
Listen, we're going to be coming back to Freedom on Deck. We're talking about Jasmine Barnes, a little girl, and this saga's kicked up. They tried to put it on the plate of white people. Shaun White of Black Lives Matter did his best, and one of our fine congresswomen did their best to put it on white people, but it ended up being a black man. And now they're not saying anything about it because they're frauds. Come back to Freedom on Deck.
Time to play the game!
There is no games about a 7-year-old little black girl dying from gunshot. No games. This is Freedom on Deck. Welcome back. But before we get into this story, I want to play something for you. I want you to have a little perspective. I want you to hear somebody from the black community. He's a conservative black man, Terrence K. Williams. And this is what Terrence has to say.
I need somebody to get Black Lives Matter on the phone right now. And while you at it, get Al Sharpton and Sean King on the phone, because I'm about to go smooth off. And you can call me an Uncle Tom, whitewash, you can call me a coon, you can call me what you want. But I have never worked at the Willy Wonka chocolate factory, so I'm not sugarcoating nothing, okay? So here we got this 7-year-old baby girl that was shot and killed in a Walmart parking lot. And people thought it was a white man. So Sean King and everybody and their mama flew out to Houston, okay? All these Black Lives Matter people flew out to Houston and protested. Then come to find out it's a black man and everybody quiet. Nobody ain't got nothing to say. Where y'all at, huh? So there you go right there. There you go. You just showed me that Black lives only matter when a white man kill a black. Black lives only matter when a white cop kill a black. But ever since we found out that this 7-year-old girl was murdered by a black man, everybody quiet. Don't nobody care about the 7-year-old little girl no more. But when y'all thought it was a white man, everybody was all rowdy and protesting and marching the streets and acting a plum fool and doing all this extra stuff. And that was just fine. That was just fine. But do the same thing when a black person kill another black person. Don't just act a plum fool and protest and act like you care when it's a white person, okay? If you're gonna care, you need to care if the person was black, white, Puerto Rican, blue, green, orange, purple. I don't know all my colors, but you know what I'm saying.
You see, and Terrence really hit the nail on the head with that. And God bless him. You know, this happens all the time. And I'm reading right here from the Washington Times. After the initial articles came out, Rep. Sheila Jackson Lee and Shaun White from Black Lives Matter politicized this thing as to be a Trump supporter. Shaun White even tweeted out that this was a hate crime from a white Trump supporter. That's exactly what he said. Now that all this is broken, he's walked that whole thing back. But Rep. Sheila
Has
Jackson,
he apologized?
No, he has not. Sheila Jackson Lee defended herself in her initial claims, and this is from the Washington Times, that a black child's killing was a hate crime when that turned out to be false. So the Texas Democrat joined friends and family of the 7-year-old Jasmine Barnes, which is kind of, we'll get into that too, because the friends and family went down with this narrative too. At a Houston rally on Saturday, telling a crowd, don't be afraid to call it what it is and seems to be, a hate crime. A day earlier, Mrs. Lee called for a federal investigation into finding the person who she felt was white who opened fire on the child. Witness and Barnes' family initially described the shooter as a white man in his 40s, and Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez initially described the suspect as having pale skin and blue eyes. ABC News reported police, however, never said the murder was being investigated as a hate crime. Knowing the criteria, I believe that this should have been looked at as a hate crime, Mrs. Lee said during a press conference Friday. We don't want to have on the street someone who is willing to kill children and possibly kill them in the name of hate. Basically, she's saying that this was a white KKK Trump supporter that went out to kill black people. Now, you know, I could keep reading from this, but the bottom line is, what happened here was a child died because of, and we'll get into, what sounds like maybe a drug deal gone wrong, and CV has something to say about that. But this child was in the care of her mother. Someone that she either initially knew or maybe knew came up and shot the child, who was black, and now has been pinned to this murder and has been arrested. But before they got this suspect, they turned it on a dime to make it political, to make it seem like it was a white man that went out looking to kill a black child in the name of that child being black.
Right, because you're gonna get the support of Black Lives Matter. You're gonna get the national attention. You're gonna get Al Sharpton. You're gonna get Jesse Jackson. You're gonna get Sheila Jackson Lee.
Right.
You're gonna get Maxine Waters.
And you know, and now that this has been proven to be a black individual, no one's saying anything.
Yeah.
Everyone's dead silent.
Yeah.
And you know, this crap has to stop. This happens all the time. They try to turn it into something it isn't, and when it's figured out to be a black suspect shooting a black, no one gives a rat's ass.
and they don't even apologize. Like Cenk Unger, whatever his name is, from the Young Turks. I mean, he was making hay out of it. He was saying
He made a video about it.
Yeah, he's saying he had a red sweatshirt, which is sort of like a red MAGA hat.
Yeah,
and then
which wasn't true.
And when they found out it was a black guy who actually did the shooting, they took down all the videos that they produced mentioning this stuff.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, first, it's a perfect example of jumping the gun and before all the facts come out, taking a side or a stance. And it's just funny. In today's world, with the technology that we have, with all the cameras, let me tell you something. There are cameras everywhere today. Everywhere. If it's not a red light camera or this or that, and when you go through a red light camera, you might not be blowing a red light, but trust me, it's taking video of you.
Right. I just want to read this little thing from Facebook. This person wrote, I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of crap, but a relative of mine owns a business where the shooters were at just before the shooting. Yesterday, the sheriff came and got video to confirm they had the right suspects. The real story was she was buying drugs, the mother, that is, was buying drugs and tried to leave without paying, and then they opened fire on her car, not knowing she had a little girl in there. It's sad, but that's what happened.
Well, here's a video with the Young Turks guy and Mark Dice. Hopefully you guys can hear it, but I just want to play it so you can get the idea of where these libs go.
It's what I referred to earlier. Of all people, Chelsea Manning taught me this phrase recently, stochastic terrorism. It's when people are encouraged by leaders to do violent acts. The leader doesn't say, kill this specific person, doesn't say you should target Jasmine Barnes. It just encourages you to hate a certain group of people. And then random, unbalanced people in the country pop up and do the violence on their behalf. And that's called stochastic terrorism. And that's what this one looks like. But they're going to investigate. I hope to God they find the guy.
Oh, they found him all right, Chunk. And like 50% of the murderers in this country, he's a black male. Which is strange when you realize that black men make up only 6.5% of the United States population, but commit 50% of the total murders.
Yeah, sad to hear that. That's actually a true statistic by Mark Dice there. And you see this punk from the Young Turks goes out and he says it's when you hear someone of leadership telling you to. So who's he talking about there? Who is he talking about? He's talking about President Trump, isn't he?
Right.
He's saying that this shooter, who he didn't know who it was, there was no proof, no one was arrested, but he automatically went to social media and put it out on the Young Turks that Donald Trump influenced this non-existent white shooter to kill a young black child when it didn't happen, and then a day later they found out that it was a black man that shot her. And do you think he put a video out to say he was sorry? Did he apologize to the president? No,
but you know what's even what I enjoy even more is that he wants to go down that road. Well, Maxine Waters has talked about circling them in a gas station, in a restaurant.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
We have politicians that have been shot because of the Democrats.
Right.
Inciting violence.
Yeah, that's stochastic.
Nobody's saying anything about that.
Right. Haven't I been talking about that for like the last couple of weeks? And then Cenk is blaming the right for doing that when it's the left doing it the whole time.
Well, that's
stochastic terrorism.
But that's what I'm getting at, and you got to be kidding me with this. We have had politicians that have had to leave their home. We have people in the media that have had to leave their home. Okay, Tucker Carlson's family was inside his home while he was not there. And the home was basically being barraged by freaking bottles and everything else.
The left are constantly, accusing the right of doing exactly what they do.
This has taken on something that I never thought ever would be possible in our country, where our leadership in this country would be encouraging the people to carry out violent acts on themselves.
Well, that's exactly what they do, and that's what Obama did for all those years. When there would be a shooting against Trayvon Martin, he would say Trayvon probably would look like my son would look.
Right, systemic racism in the police department.
Right, or that the police acted stupidly. Instead of getting the facts of the story straight first, which is exactly what happened here. This is the same thing that happened here. And this is a young girl, a 7-year-old girl, that was gunned down by a black man. And what really ticks me off, and I'm sorry to say it, is that Rep. Sheila Jackson Lee went down and met with the family. The family knew who shot this little girl.
Oh, yeah.
And they still kept up with the narrative that it was a white person. Why do you think that is?
Of course.
And I'm sure they were asked to do that, too.
And, it's journalism 101. It's like getting the facts. You know what I mean? You don't report on something until you have all the facts. You know what I mean? That's why they say allegedly and the supposed suspect or whatever. You know what I mean? They use certain language because until somebody's proven guilty in a court of law, they are a presumed suspect. But you know what I mean? Today, that is thrown out the window. And you can't watch CNN and believe anything that they say.
And the black people that are getting attacked in this country are the black people that are on the right, are the conservative blacks in this country. We had the video of that young black man that went into a Starbucks and was there minding his own business wearing a MAGA hat on, and a white guy comes up and starts harassing him about his MAGA hat. Did I hear anything from the left about white people confronting a black man in a restaurant and telling him to take something off and bullying him and taking his hat and throwing it on the ground? Did Anderson Cooper come out the next night and condemn them? Did Don Lemonade, the supposed civil rights activist that's seen on CNN every night, come out and condemn that? No, they didn't give a rat's rear end because it was a Trump supporter and it was someone that doesn't align with them and their radical agenda.
And behind the curtain are all the communist scumbags who are pulling the strings, trying to divide this country and create a Cold War, which is becoming warmer and warmer and sporadically hot.
Yeah, there is. I truly, and this isn't just rhetoric or any of that. I really truly believe, there is gonna, the shot heard around the world. There is gonna be an event that is gonna set this country on fire.
With the Civil War.
I never thought that I would ever say that, but I really more and more. Every day, these stories, the narrative, the way that our politicians and the left is just pushing these narratives is going to set us into a second Civil War.
It's scary, man. But just be ready. And don't believe what the media spins all the time, because 99% of the time, they're trying to misrepresent the story for a reason. Listen, speaking of media spin, Brian, we're going to come back, and there's a Chicago Democrat office that was raided by the feds. And what did they find there, Brian?
Oh, they found a few good bang sticks, also known as 23 firearms.
And wasn't this an office that was trying to regulate firearms in Chicago?
We're going to get into it, buddy. We're going to get into it. Come back to Freedom on Deck, 94.9 News Now, and stimulating talk. Number one, baby. Oh, yeah. We like propane. We're going to shine a little we're going to give a little propane to this story.
Oh, yeah.
And blow it up. It's coming from the Blaze. Gun-grabbing Chicago Democrat arrested on corruption charges. Feds find 23 guns in his office. When the FBI raided the offices of Democrat Chicago Alderman Ed Burke, a strong proponent of gun control.
Oh, good for him.
They confiscated what? Nearly 24 guns.
I'll be.
Burke is facing federal corruption charges and recently was subject to an FBI raids of both his ward office and his office in Chicago City Hall. He is charged with attempted extortion. Sounds like a great guy.
Yeah.
Burke allegedly attempted to withhold permits from a company unless they agreed to retain his property tax law firm, Clafter and Burke. Burke has insisted that he is innocent. He was released on a $10,000 unsecured bond, the Chicago Tribune reported. That's great. You know, if one of us had done that, or anybody listening to this show, I'm sure they would have got a $10,000 unsecured bond as their release as well.
It's almost as offensive as a gay Democrat getting away with murder.
Yeah.
We already talked about that today.
I'm sorry. It just keeps going. During the sting of one of his offices, federal agents confiscated 23 firearms. It is unclear which office the guns were stored in, and which office at the time of the raid. But Chicago's WMMB TV reported that at least some of the guns were on display at one point in City Hall. Burke had been such a strong advocate for gun control that he had voted to outlaw cell phone cases shaped like guns. While
Gotta stop that. Yeah, that's important.
While signs outside City Hall prohibit anyone from carrying firearms inside the building, Burke may have been able to circumvent this with the help of a nearly century-and-a-half-old loophole. According to WBBM, an 1872 law designated aldermen as a peace officer. This designation may have allowed Burke to keep so many weapons inside City Hall in a city known to have some of the strictest gun control laws in the nation. I mean,
and I saw just another side. I see a lot that his law firm represented President Trump previously for property taxes. A lot of, I'm just saying,
probably strong-armed President Trump too.
Maybe. But what's he doing with all the? Here's my question. They don't really specify why he had all these guns in his office.
Well, he had all these guns because he has guns, and it's just like every other good Democrat out there who doesn't want you to have guns, but has guns themselves.
That's my point. There you go. That's why I was asking the question. Why does he have guns? He doesn't want you to have guns, but he can have them. He can have security guards. He can have a wall around his mansion. He can have a gate that only he can get into. But we can't have things like that, can we, Steve?
I hate attorneys. I hate lawyers.
Me too.
Particularly the leftist kind. That's all they do is extort. You know, he's in trouble for extortion, but that's all they do is extort. They always, they pad the bills.
Yep.
They extort their own clients out of their money.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
They're disgusting creatures.
Well,
Yes,
it's this part is even better because this article is great. It says less than a month ago, Burke had encouraged Chicago residents to hand over their own firearms. Any of those guns that are sitting in your closet that some relative might have brought back from the First World War, Second World War, Korea, bring them in, get your $100, get those guns off the streets, he said.
And put them in my office.
I'll give you $100 for that $1,000 gun. No problem.
I don't see.
Maybe that's an angle that they should be looking at. Because why does he have the 23 guns in his office and not at home? Maybe he is dealing in firearm sales illegally.
That's what I'm wondering.
Maybe he's buying guns for $100, taking them and then selling them for 8, 9, 10. Who knows how many? How much he could be getting for them?
It's a weird thing to have 23 guns. That's what I'm saying.
Well, they don't even say what kind of guns they are. Are they AK-27s or whatever they're called?
47.
47s, yeah. I mean. Was he planning a terrorist attack? Or is he involved, like Chet says, is he involved in the black market? You know, for 26 years, this band in Chicago has kept billions in the coffers of the black market.
Well, it is Chicago.
Right.
Home of the mafia.
I'm telling you, the FBI should be looking into whether or not he was selling these firearms illegally. Where did these firearms come from? Did he purchase them? Because if he purchased them, there would have been a background check, and they would have, when he bought the gun, he would have had the serial number would have been written down on the paperwork, and it would have been filed with NICS.
Well, Brian, that won't happen because he's not an evil Republican. So this will be water under the bridge.
I want to know exactly what kind of firearms they were. I want to know exactly how much ammunition he had. I want to see was he planning something?
Well, I would like to know what it is too, and why he had that kind of, this kind of arsenal in his office.
Let me ask you this: if they would have went into somebody's home, apartment in Chicago, was carrying out some sort of warrant or search warrant for some other reason on this person, and found 23 firearms in that person's home, what do you think would have happened? Because I guarantee you that, all right, New York City, you can't have any of that. Try to get a pistol permit.
You're going
in
away for a
Manhattan.
long time.
The only way you're getting a permit to carry in Manhattan or in the 5 boroughs of New York City is if you are law enforcement, plain and simple.
Right.
That's it. Okay? So I want to know, in the city with the toughest gun laws, is he going to get fried? Is he going to get charged for having these firearms?
His bail should be set at $1 million.
Land of the toughest gun laws. Isn't it ironic? All the shooting deaths that happen in Chicago done by illegal guns.
That's right.
Yep.
Not by card-carrying NRA members, folks. Yep. All you good liberals in Connecticut that are scared that a gun's going to shoot itself off in the drawer.
Yeah.
Those good liberals.
Yep.
Look, just go over to Chicago and walk around on the streets of Chicago sometime. If you get shot, I guarantee you it's not by a card-carrying NRA member.
I bet he was selling guns under the table.
Yep.
Something is awry here, and I don't know exactly what it is. But the thing that confuses me is this is somebody with his own law firm that's a politician. What does he need?
Knows the gun laws.
What does he
tell
need?
me he doesn't know.
What does he need the money for also, if that's what he's doing? What's the purpose of that?
Greed.
Attorneys are above the law.
Greed,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah,
Greed.
I guess it could be just greed. It's a strange story, though.
Well, if he's strong arming people for permits to build and do things, if he's that kind of guy, I'm sure he's probably running illegal guns or doing something shady.
Absolutely. Well, it's been another fantastic week here on Freedom on Deck.
Oh, yeah!
And listen, we got another fantastic week for you coming up. We're going to have Carla Diadesi, and she's from Culture of Life 1972, and she's also a radio host on Fox affiliate 1180 AM Philadelphia. And we've got Josh and Nicole Landers from Parent to Parent. We have them on a monthly basis. Come on back to Freedom on Deck.